Evening, everyone. I'd like to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded. Welcome to the March 12th, 2026 Constitution meeting. Please, Chair, introduce the rest of the board.
Ian Whiting.
Mike Mandela.
Have another.
You think of Halen?
I'd like to remind everybody that things should be directed to the chair, or should answer as they can. At this point, I'd like to bring the welfare for the public. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to add? And we'll go to public hearing, notice of intent, 26 Rossi Farm Road, number P180871. It is Thomas and Kayla Elliott. Marlo from Marlo Environmental Consulting is here to represent.
Good evening, everybody. Hi, am I allowed to share my screen?
Yes.
Just if you can give me 1 second, never been so rapid fire on the screen share, so. Just bear with me for 1 moment. Bear with me for 1 sec, guys. I promise I'll be there in a sec.
While you're doing that, Matt, what I'll do is I'll give a brief description of the project. It's minor grading, a new retaining wall, and stormwater improvements within the 100-foot buffer zone to the bordering vegetated wetland. And it's asking for some tree removal outside the buffer zone site.
Okay, so it's not letting me share my screen. It's saying only meeting organizers and presenters can share.
Another shot. Board of Health got teams bombed a couple of weeks ago, so we've tightened up who's allowed to share things.
Oh, did they?
Oh yeah, no, I get it. Trust me, I get it.
What was that, Carl?
A couple of weeks ago, the Board of Health got Zoom bombed. Someone started putting pornographic materials and sharing it, and they had to shut the meeting down because they couldn't deal with it. So we now have a little bit more restrictions. I had to give him permission to do a screen share.
We're sorry you missed that.
But it's Teams, not Zoom, so that's.
I've had that. I was
Because it came up.
I was in a meeting in Lunenburg that happened, and then the week later I was in a meeting in Harvard and the same thing happened. Yeah, so it does happen.
Same person.
I hope not. Anyway, again, I think the description that was just read was pretty accurate here. So what we have is we have a pre-existing single-family home that was recently built as part of the development. And from what I understand of the history of this development has been ongoing for the last 10 years. This is one of the later phases. It was built like about a year and a half ago. So what we have is we have the single family dwelling, and when it was done, there was a a sloped area here that didn't have any reinforcing materials, like no retaining wall. Like there is an existing boulder retaining wall right here currently that's holding the grading in. And when I walked it with the commissioners that were on site, it was fairly obvious that when this thing started getting steep, because of the whatever was done with this grading, the layering or whatever with the fill material, the area was beginning to slip and slough, and it was pretty obvious as to why the wall was necessary here. So we're proposing a retaining wall and some grading here to reroute some of the stormwater away so it doesn't concentrate so much right here. Second phase is that we have an existing country drain going through the front yard, through the property here. It enters through a riprap area here and goes under the driveway. The design that's been incorporated will retain the same flow. So in other words, what's functioning now will function then. There is a large trap rock riprap splash pad that's proposed that would, dissipate the energy and allow the flow to go without impacting the area downstream of the wetland downstream. The wetland delineation is pre-existing from the prior notice of intent on the development, and was locked in, so it was reflagged and relocated. The second phase is to do grading within the rear yard, because as we were standing right about here in the rear yard, it was pretty apparent that this slopes down. And because it slopes down the way it does, and because of the way the grading was done, post-development grading, you have areas where you have water accumulating. There's an area of trees right here that would be taken out and areas regraded to allow water to flow down here. Now, when we went out on site, the area, had, obviously everything's high groundwater now because we just had a fresh snow melt and everything looks wet. So I went back to my notes, and what I had in my notes was that I went and I actually did a whole plethora of soil surveys in this area to see what was under the ground. And while the area has a high water table currently now, the soils out in that area were actually a 5-4, bright yellow with no modeling. So even though the area does retain some water seasonally from the spring flow, the wetlands actually begin downstream, where the sloping actually ends, and things tend to concentrate off the property, which was also very evident from what we saw on the site walk. And this area over here has some water hydrology, basically due to some poor grading and the way everything was blended into the existing tree canopy. But there's no supporting hydric soil here. The other thing that was spotted was a pipe coming from a perimeter drain over into the tree lining here. And the commissioner asked that we cut that back to the edge of the tree line and just put like a riprap splash pad, so it's not bleeding directly into the wooded area right here. I think I covered it, guys. Was there anything I missed from our site walk?
Sorry. Just the backyard expansion to the stone wall.
Sorry, what?
The stone wall expansion of the backyard to the stone wall back in the back rear of the house.
That's here.
Was that previously evaluated for wetlands or whatnot? Is that what we just, we're talking about to the left or to the back?
So I went down and looked at that area, and I did a whole bunch of soil evaluation, and everything was a bright yellow in the underbelly. So the bright yellow essentially is a non-hydric soil. It was a 10YR 5-4. Actually, in some spots, it was even bright. It was a 6-5. What I found was as you went down past the perimeter of the property line, you started going down to the flat spot, there was an area there. But again, as I noted earlier, the area wasn't included on the original plans as any wetland delineation, and currently the wetland delineation is locked into the order of conditions period from prior approval.
Okay.
But I did go back to my notes, and I did look back at what I had done. I had spoken to my clients about it, and Tom actually reminded me that, yeah, you remember you showed me when we were out there that there was like not wetland soil. So I went back and looked at my field notes. Sure enough, it showed that everything I was finding under there was a bright yellow. No modeling. 5-4, 5-6.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciated the input on the site walk too.
At this time, I'd like to take questions from any of the members.
Who went on the sidewalk?
I did.
Three of us,
Myself.
Terry did, and Susan.
Susan and Bob and me.
Any other observations?
I had a question, Matt. I don't know if, you're still proposing that front part of the property to put in riprap, is that my understanding?
Yeah, so when I spoke to the design engineer, what he told me was the pre and post development of what he's proposing for the design on this pipe doesn't change the function of what's there now whatsoever. It will still continue to function with the drainage that it was originally designed for. And the riprap splash pad will more than effectively dissipate the energy. So there'll really be no change in drainage scenario, only the way it looks.
Do you know if the drainage pattern was part of a larger stormwater approval previously given?
That I don't know. I do know that that could have been put in there. I mean, it's pointed right at the wetland itself. So it looks like it may have been installed as, you know, part of mitigation for the front yard. There's no connecting areas to it. There's no connecting catch basins that drain into it. It looks like it was just made as a catchment to get water from the hillside coming off the lot onto the lot and then convey it out to back to the tree area.
Okay, doesn't lot 15 utilize that?
Sorry, what was that?
Doesn't lot 15 also tie into that?
No, nothing's tied. We didn't find anything tied into it. So what you have here is, you see this area that I'm circling with my cursor? Well, hopefully you can see me circling it with my cursor.
Yes.
Okay, so that area is basically a pit. It is a pit with a pipe, and you can see there's a dotted line, the pipe connects to here. So what happens is water drains in overland, goes into here, goes through the pipe, comes out, goes through the swale, and into the wet here. So what that was made was to prevent water from damming from the driveway. They took it and carried it through to the front yard out to here. So what we're proposing in this design is to basically recontour everything right now so that it will flow evenly into the area overland, into the, you know, the side, and go into the wetland around this way. What's going in here now from this area right here will still continue to flow. There will be absolutely no change in water flow and design capacity of that water conveyance to handle the water it's doing now. I know the commission had asked me, the commissioners that were on site had asked me about that, so I conveyed that concern that afternoon, actually, to the design engineer when I was able to connect with him.
I noticed as well that the septic area was starting to collapse on one side. So
Right about here.
Who was the design engineer?
Nicholas Facendla from Level Design Group in Plainville.
The hash mark line is the 100-foot buffer?
The 100-foot buffer is here. Yep. And the 50-foot buffer goes through the property as well.
Okay, can you bring the thing down so we can see the backyard?
How's that? That okay?
Yeah. There are no wetlands beyond the stone wall?
No, like I said, there was a perched area here that I did investigate, and there were no supporting hydric soils. You do have drainage from the sloped area going in, and it eventually turns wet as it heads off the property. That water flow will be maintained with the grading when the trees are removed.
And I guess I'm asking, is there wetland areas beyond the stone wall?
Yes, in here.
And where's the buffer to that?
It's not shown on the plan. It wasn't shown on any development plans, and I didn't determine the limits because it was off the property.
But is it possible the buffer would go into the backyard?
If it did, it would be slight.
that might be something to have flagged. If they're doing this new work, that may, need to be flagged at that point so that we can identify where the 100-foot buffer. I'd like to also see where the 50-foot is, just to make sure that, you know, we know where the 50-foot is. It looked like it might be close to the corner of the house. So that would be something good to know. Carl? Carl?
I'll wait, so. You have
So
something?
the only, well, there's only two issues with the wetland off stream. Number one, I'm not sure the buffer zone would actually approach it. Number two, again, we have a scenario where when I look through the historical aspects of the file, there were no wetlands on what was previously approved. Shown in these areas, only in the areas that I had marked out. And right now, we're in a phase where the wetland line is locked. And I don't even know if I could get permission to go on somebody else's property and start flagging. People kind of get ornery about that.
Could we get the staff comments addressed? Either you read them out or I can read them out and you can get responses. Okay, first staff comment. Was the legal ad fee submitted prior to today?
Yeah, it was submitted. It was paid.
Yeah, the number.
Okay, well, it's just a staff comment.
Oh, yeah, there was.
Yep, no, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, second one is something to discuss between you as the engineer and us as the commission. Staff question is the retaining wall a structure? And the reason is because then the Conservation Commission would have to decide whether we consider that acceptable within our wetlands bylaw 50-foot no-build buffer zone. The retaining wall is proposed to be just outside of the 25-foot no disturb zone.
Correct. Your 25-foot no disturb shows right here. So it's basically hugging it. Now, my reading of your bylaw, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my reading of your bylaw would be that a structure would be defined as something that would require the obtaining of a building permit.
Okay.
And as this wall isn't going to be any taller than 4 feet, it wouldn't require a building permit.
Okay, and
It says it's gonna be a stone wall, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And my client, Tom, is nodding on camera, yes.
I have a follow-up question. What hardship would result if the Conservation Commission denied permission to build the retaining wall?
Well, essentially, something's going to have to be done on the property because as the commissioners that went on site observed, the area on the side of the hill, this sloped area right here where we need to put the wall is starting to slough and collapse. So it's not a good scenario. When the grading was done, I don't know, I don't think it was done in, like somebody just slapped it in there, but sometimes when you try to layer grading like this, it doesn't always take. And in this case, there were areas that were obviously starting to give way. And if allowed to, be left in its current condition, it could wind up compromising the septic system if the area starts to collapse a little bit.
Okay, and that would be a Board of Health issue that we need to work with on. Okay,
Would riprap stabilize that area?
You'd have to riprap that whole slope. I think you probably would rather put a wall there than put riprap. That's a lot of work and a lot of rock that you're actually putting in that 50-foot zone. I'd rather just minimize the amount of armoring that you'd have to do and allow a lawn to reestablish so that your overland flow would be able to filter out. You're not going to get that with the riprap. And eventually all that stuff's going to do is overgrow with weeds. So the wall's easier to maintain.
any further discussion on the wall?
Well, Matt, on that wall, what was the height of that slope? Was it an 8-foot high slope?
If I would have to judge, I would say it was between 8 and 10 feet.
So with a 4-foot wall, you're still gonna have a 6-foot slope, correct?
What's going to happen is you can see this grading. You've got grading lines right here and a grading line right here. everything above the wall is going to be regraded so that the slope's a little bit gentler so that it will blend into the wall.
You're gonna have the water go over the wall or to the front corner and try to drain it towards the front corner?
Okay, so if you follow the lines of the contours, you got contours that are graded to head out towards this part of the front yard and then this way. These walls are built with a gravel apron that normally goes behind them. And I don't know if Nick had a potential detail here for that. But normally when you do these walls, what happens is you have gravel behind them that winds up functioning as like a curtain drain in the back. So everything is allowed to trickle through in the back side of the wall underneath so that everything goes into the groundwater. So it doesn't like it overflows like a waterfall. But the wall will have its own drainage curtain behind it. So it will allow it to percolate into the ground. Whatever doesn't get taken off-site by overland flow.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, just one, it's obvious that you need fill in the backyard, is that correct?
Yeah, let me zoom in a little bit.
Once you take the trees down,
Well, that's
Yep.
the third staff comment. If we can finish talking about the retaining wall, then we'll get on to the back, what
Oh, I
what
think
we got in
we're
the backyard.
No, I just wanted to make sure that nobody had any other questions on the wall.
I don't have any questions. I don't see a problem with the retaining wall. If you look at the contour lines. Bob. 4 and 2. Gonna be on the low side of the wall. And the slope on the high side is gonna be at 498, so 4 feet. So it'll be a gentlest slope,
6 feet,
and it's gonna pitch this way, as you can see by the contour. But this member doesn't have a problem.
I'm seeing it's gonna fit all right into here.
Right. And right there and dissipate.
Yeah, that's over area now.
Okay, the third staff comment is about the backyard. If we could ask you to identify the number of trees within the 100-foot buffer that would be removed, and then the commission would consider whether we would allow grubbing of the stumps in the buffer zone so that you could expand the lawn, or if we want to give other conditions for the tree removal.
The answer to that is 0. There's no wetlands over here.
That was fast.
Yeah, I was not hard to calculate. As I had stated earlier, I had done a complete, even though, like I said, even though the wetland line is locked, I still look over the terrain to see what's out here. And considering I do a lot of that, I don't necessarily remember every site I've been. So I usually take a lot of notes. I went back at my notes and noted that this area all around had bright soil. So what you've got is you've got a shallow water table up at least over here. That during wetter seasons will have some water on it, but not enough to convert to hydric conditions. So if you can, as you can see by the existing contours here, you've got a 491 contour. It's going to be brought up like a couple of feet a couple of feet here down to about a foot and a half here. So it's not like you're adding in like it's not like you're building a mountain like in the front yard. You're just basically resloping it gentle so that the water will continue to flow off to any wetlands that are downstream.
The minor grading that's proposed within the buffer zone is not all happening in the front yard in the area with the retaining wall?
This is all in grassed area here. There's no trees to be removed here.
Okay,
I thought there was, and I thought you
You
pointed
might
out.
have over here where there's some grading, you might have 2 small caliper trees that were here to be removed. There isn't really very much. And this work here is actually on the ground itself.
Well, the house is in the buffer zone,
That's correct.
right? The scale on the print is 1 inch equals 20 feet of believe.
That's
But
correct.
Back of the house, so where he's showing the boulder wall, it's approximately 40 feet. So I'm sure that's been disturbed before. So what he plans to do is grade it a little better. It looks like to me. Grade it a little better. I mean, it's right around his house.
That job's huge. I understand what they're trying to do.
Yeah, geomorphology happens. And it was, that site is difficult. In general, the whole hill, very wide, lots of ledge.
So,
So
at this point, if there's no more questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the plan as presented.
Is there a second
Okay.
Discussion.
discussion?
Our agent isn't here, they're due back from vacation, I believe, tomorrow, although they may not work until Monday. We have a template for order of conditions, and so she would go in and add in all of the stuff that we usually do. Are you comfortable? Have you seen a copy of what that template is?
No, but I've discussed the template with her. I mean, to give you the skinny on me, guys, I mentioned it to the other commissioners. I've been a wetlands professional for about 40 years. A bunch of those years I was a part-time consultant and a full-time agent myself. So
Which town?
I'm sorry, what?
Which town?
I retired from Lunenburg. I'm actually still working part-time in Westminster because you never get it out of your blood. So I retired from Lunenburg. I worked part-time in Sterling. I worked part-time in Westminster. I worked full-time in Lunenburg. I've worked for the cities of Leominster. And I do third-party reviews routinely for the town of Dudley. So yeah, I've been around the block.
Okay, so you're comfortable working with Isabella on Monday when she drafts the final NOI?
Yeah, absolutely. And,
Okay.
I just want to coordinate with her so I can get the order so I can get it recorded too.
Yep.
Matt, if you don't mind, what size pipe are you planning on putting in? What size pipe is under the driveway now?
Hold on one second. Let me pull my plan back up. Just bear with me for a sec.
Six.
It's a 12-inch pipe, high-density polyethylene.
Is that what you're gonna continue with, a 12-inch?
Yeah, it's a 12-inch. 12-inch can take a lot of water.
Okay, you think you can send us a copy of those, soil reports that you had?
Yeah. Well, I've got them as notes. If you want me to put them on a transect sheet, I'll be happy to.
Yeah. Please.
Yeah, no, that's not a problem. Happy to do it.
Any other questions? There's a motion made and seconded.
Oh, for a vote.
Have a final vote.
Yeah, call for a vote. All in favor, say.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. And again, as I said to the commissioners that were on site yesterday, I wanted to pass my thanks to Isabella for, guiding me through and trading some war stories and talking about the history on this particular development, because I guess there's a lot of history here.
That's the whole purpose, is to help out and do the best we can.
Yeah, no, and
Thomas
believe
and-
me, it's appreciated.
Thomas and Kayla, is that, good luck with it.
Good night, guys.
Aye.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks, guys.
Agenda number 5, notice of intent, Nipmuc Drive, number 2180870. That's continued.
I think we have to make a motion.
Oh, is that, well, that's Benny Pinto.
Yeah. All right,
Finish the
so
construction of a single,
project description, finishes, construction of a single-family house, garage, utilities, and vegetation disturbance within the buffer zone to Lake Nipmuc. This project was previously approved under DEP number 2180837, but failed to receive an order of conditions. New filing includes a garage and will require the restoration of 890 square feet of bordering vegetated wetlands. I don't see anybody from 2 Nipmuc Drive here. Is there anybody here from 2 Nipmuc Drive?
No, they requested continuance.
So,
they requested a,
Yes.
I make a motion to continue the notice of intent for 2 Nipmuc Drive, DEP number 218-0870 to
Second.
March
Sorry.
26th.
Second,
all right, motion's been made and seconded.
my discussion is there were substantial DEP comments, and I'm expecting that the applicant will be using this time wisely and being able to come forward with some responses to that.
We can only hope.
Any other discussion? Right, could I have, a vote?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes to continue. And agenda number 6, enforcement order for commercial forestry activities on 5153 Washington Street, 6 Northbridge Street, 153 Blackstone Street, 158, 164, 166 North Ave. Review and approve the wetlands consultant as proposed by the violator per the enforcement order issued on February 19th, 2026.
Have anything from?
Pardon?
I haven't seen.
Do we have anything from them?
I think her comment is that they've proposed, someone.
If I'm not mistaken, Gary Smith,
Right, I see that
sent an
here.
email.
But there's nothing in.
Right.
writing.
Do we have,
An
yeah,
email is a legal document.
Dr. Wang.
Really, when it comes to engaging.
So what's this, to give them an enforcement order? Or-
no, we already did.
The enforcement.
So they were supposed to be here tonight to explain themselves?
No, they did that last time
Yeah.
So what was what was the purpose of this meeting?
to approve Deshang Wang or another wetland scientist. That was part of the EO that they needed to find one and then we would approve it.
He hasn't seen the site yet. Okay.
So there's nothing to act on.
No,
What we would act on is to approve Deshang, as we consider Deshang acceptable to be their wetland scientist.
And the Shannon,
Did I miss
So
an
we
email?
will-
I don't know. Bob,
Bob,
did you
Can you
say that there was an email from Gary Smith
If you
nominating?
read the staff comments, it says, violator must propose a qualified consultant to the commission for the March 12th meeting as outlined in the enforcement order issued February 19th, 2026. Gary Smith has indicated he will likely be using the Shen Wang. Mr. Wang is returning from vacation and should be able to visit the site the week of March 2nd or 9th.
Could
so
I
we
ask,
haven't received it yet.
I don't know anything about it. I
yeah,
haven't heard
there's
anything
nothing,
else.
nothing in writing as to say
Right.
to him to accept the government.
question? The question I have, it's my memory, it's failing me. What happens after the wetlands consultant was approved? Was something triggered by that? They move the logs or something?
I don't think we decided anything. I think we were just doing it step by
Imagine
step.
if something was triggered by our approval.
No, that our approval means that DeShang would then go and prepare documentation and then present that at
Come
the
back.
meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
The logs are still being held hostage.
So is this something that Isabel is gonna have to do when she gets back, is contact them
So-
and make
so-
sure.
Again, we have no information to
Right.
act on anything.
Right.
We should probably, I think, check with Katie, with Mr. Chairman.
Well, what I think we can do is make a contingent.
Yeah.
We can make a contingent approval. What I would recommend is we vote on whether we consider DeShang to be acceptable. In that case, if Gary does propose them, we wouldn't have to delay things until our next meeting for his approval.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So I'll make the motion that if Gary Smith does notify our agent that they wish to have DeShang Wang be, that we approve them as the wetlands consultant.
Second,
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? At this point, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes.
so we'll leave a note for Isabel to contact.
I expect she'll see the video. She'll be watching the video so she can make the minutes for the meeting.
So she will contact Mr. Smith and say
Right.
that we've approved the Shannon Wayne to do the,
Contingently, if Gary nominates someone else, we have to do something at a future meeting.
Item agenda number 7. First discussion. Is Kimball Moore on the Zoom?
Nope.
That point,
Jim McCarthy on
you know. So I don't see any representation for this item agenda number.
I make a motion that we table it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Okay, item agenda number 8, peer review proposals for draft wetland regulations. Review proposals submitted by the BSC Group, Ty and Bond, and Beals and Thomas for peer review services in drafting wetlands protection regulations under the revised Mendon Wetlands Protection Bylaw. You know,
I honestly have not had time to review the documents yet, but I have worked with these plans before. I like to say.
okay, any other discussion?
The one that I liked because it was the only one that seemed to, the presentation itself was good. It was easy to read. The price was reasonable. That was the one by Beals and Thomas. The other two to me just didn't look as in depth, and Teague Bond wanted $25,000. So that's a little expensive. So yeah, Beals and Thomas was the best one, according to myself.
Carl?
I immediately jumped down to the price tags. One of them is 10,000, the other one's 11,000, and as you said, the third one's 25,000. I looked to see why the 25,000 one was that high, and it's because they are proposing to do more work and review more documents. They would not just be reviewing our own wetlands bylaw and past practices, but they would also be looking at a whole lot of other town documents dealing with conservation land in terms of what we're doing. In which case we might want to consider it, but then we might want to also reach out to the other committees and say, do they want to participate, maybe not in funding, but participate in a discussion of that wider area.
Well, again, going back to, did they quote the same work? It sounds like they did, so we should
Yeah.
get the other the other quotes the opportunity.
They had an extra step as well. They had an extra meeting
Yep.
step in it.
Apples are mentioned.
The thing one of the proposals actually suggests who might work on this. And they even had pictures.
Yep.
The others really did not. And I think there are a couple of questions as to whether they have qualified staff, but we assume they do, but who actually is going to do this work? And what are the payroll lines that we're actually talking about here? Are we getting time from a senior person? Are we getting some two field people at a very
Right.
low rate? I think those things ought to be in a proposal.
Yes.
The second thing, and they all did this, although the $25,000 one, let me just backtrack for a second. They said they'd come here or do videos for an hour. And if there was additional work, they would be charging. So that 25 is up to us to stay within an hour, at least in the context of their proposal. The last thing is that all of these contractors have included in their contract that anything they produce is theirs, although we are paying for it. And I rebel as a person who's paid for work before that that's our work. It's not somebody else's work. So I think any of these contracts would have to be adjusted
Mhm.
to reflect that type of thing. The last thing I have, and unfortunately Peter's not here because he is the one that normally raises it. I think there are a couple of policy things that we have to decide on before the regulations are really too far along. Everyone since I've been here has been talking about beaches. And I don't know anything about beaches, but it has always come up. So what is our policy going to be on new beaches? And how does that get translated into a reasonable regulatory framework?
Point.
I don't have the answer to that, but there are lots of ways to do it. You could minimize the square footage of allowable beach. You can do all kinds of stuff if you're going to allow them, but that they're not just a giant scar on the lakefront. Those are questions I think we have to discuss policy-wise among ourselves before we actually get into the point of having someone write the regulations. That doesn't mean we couldn't hire someone in the interim period. But I'm a little uncomfortable with the lack of knowledge of who's going to do the work and the certain other provisions of the contract that I just don't believe you pay somebody and say, gee, thanks, this is still yours. It becomes yours.
Yeah,
Very good points.
yeah. I've worked with all three of these firms and yeah, they're all fine, but Time Bond is a big multinational corporation. And that's all I'll just say, you know, it'd be more beneficial, I think, to work with somebody smaller, who would care more,
Yeah.
put more work, you know,
Yep.
more bang for the buck sort of thing.
The staff comments for this is if we have questions for the different proposals, that we make sure that we are explicit about them, and then Isabella would follow up. I believe I'm hearing the following: ownership of the work product. We don't like the fact that they're claiming ownership. Second, we want to give the two quotes that came in at $10,000 and $11,000 the ability to say, do you want to expand the scope of work to include what the third proposal was doing? I believe that's what you were saying.
Right.
Okay. And
Again,
then,
compare apples to apples.
right,
Right now it's oranges, pears, and apples.
either that or have the $25,000 people say what they would do for 11,000. And then the third one is you want staff.
I'd like to know who's going to do the work.
From the other two, for the other two.
And what sheets.
Civil love organization they represent.
Right, sheets.
So I believe that's the feedback that would go if Isabella would go back for a second round of requests. And the follow up for what you said is, as part of good and welfare for the commission would be to ask Isabella to put on the agenda for a future meeting, a discussion of what our beach policy is going to be.
And any others that,
Well, we're always hemming and hawing about the 2550. No,
Discussions that I've heard is you're allowed 10% of your beachfront, which if you have 60 feet, you get 10 feet. Only up to a certain amount. But that would be something to get a more clarified description too in our bylaws, so that way there we have something more solid.
Well, it wouldn't go in the bylaws, it would go in some kind of
Regulation.
regulation. For example, at one of the parcels we looked at last year, we said, okay, make sure the sand doesn't blow into the lake by covering it up when you're not using it. Or we may have a policy that says if you're using sand, we don't want it going into the water. You have some kind of a barrier like they had. So that's the kind of policy that we would need to think about and have a discussion about.
then you want somebody to turn it into regulatory language.
Right, and that is what we're looking for with these three companies.
And the other thing, while you're on the subject of specific policies, you probably, or we probably should codify in a regulation the agreement on the docks that you all did in August, because that's kind of a regulatory language.
Docks are subject to Chapter 91, so
Yeah, but you
our
make-
policy is pretty much do what the Chapter 91 tells you, even though we haven't enforced it for the past couple decades.
Well, I thought you had a policy that the association also entered into, that we're gonna leave you alone unless you do something new.
Okay,
That was my reading of that. And then I think, in fairness to applicants, ought to be codified as a regulation. You have to apply to us when,
If you're renovating your dock or replace.
you know,
So these are all things that
but it's just an example. There may be more.
should be addressed in the regulation.
if there's no other discussion, I'll make a motion to table this and ask Isabella to follow up.
Second.
All right, motion's been made to table it. All those in favor? Opposed?
third and fourth.
And motion passed unanimously. Agenda number 9, updates. Another chair. Looking forward to Isabella coming back.
You got to print out all the paperwork, huh?
Luckily, she was very good to me. She really waited for me. Thank you, Isabella. All right, so agent, we won't be here in the agent. We Netmark Task Force, the Netmark Association isn't meeting until probably next month, so there's nothing to be said there. And Land Use Committee, I don't believe anybody is here from Land Use.
What I can say about that is they did have a meeting, and Peter can brief us on it. They have produced a red line document to update their bylaw, and it'll probably, the GBRC reviewed it. It'll probably be going for the May town meeting. It's to bring it up to date because since the bylaw was originally passed in 2000, we now have the CPA and we have the land bank. And so the new document incorporates those into our bylaws.
Agenda number 10, good and welfare for the commission. Does anybody have anything they'd like to bring up?
Yeah. I'd like to get together with Isabella and schedule for anybody who wants to go. Site visit on
Yeah.
Muddy Brook.
That's fine. Count me in.
And, pardon me? As the weather
He said, count
permits.
me in.
As the weather permits.
This is the part next to Route 16.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll go
And,
next.
the objective of that is not only to familiarize ourselves with the site, but to turn you into kind of resource interpreters as you're going through there, identifying points of interest that need to be put into a plan later on in terms of what people might understand about the resource. Who lives in the trees?
The Lorax.
And more importantly, in the ponds.
But I just want to I'll get together with Isabella and try to pick a time and a place and a date. Go out and do that.
Okay.
Yeah, let me know. I'm happy to go.
Pardon me?
So let me know. I'm happy to go.
Everybody will be notified.
Our select board liaison is on. I wanted to see if Jason wanted to chime in and with anything that he wanted to say.
Jason, do you have anything to add to the good and welfare?
Nope. You guys look very well fared and good.
Thank you for attending. It was nice to see you.
Yeah, that was, I always forget the verbosity of the public meeting. And so it's good to be reminded of that. You know, I enjoyed it. And then when the science came out, I just Googled some stuff. So it was good.
Thank you, Jason.
No problem. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Item agenda number 11, items not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance of the meeting. I don't believe there's any. So we'll go to item agenda number 12.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting tonight.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to second that motion.
Can we
All
discuss?
those in favor?
We're not allowed to discuss.
Wait, let's bring the tequila.
It's not debatable. Aye.
Motion passed unanimously.
Oh, what a lovely day. Are you collecting placards